Hello beloveds, welcome back to my channel. I've been talking about narcissism for a long time now. This time around I'll be talking about the origins of narcissism. I'll be looking at it both from the mythological standpoint, and I'll share with you the revelations I got from the Bible as I sought the Lord on the subject. Well, my channel is dedicated towards creating narcissistic abuse awareness, more so from a biblical standpoint, and I'll also be discussing other general life issues. I'll kickstart this off with the mythological view. There are so many mythological views on it out there, so I won't really dwell much on it, other than Narcissus was a very handsome guy who went about his way, in life. He was so much into his own personal issues, the hunting and all that. There were so many nymphs around who wanted him, who loved him. I mean, this guy was handsome. It so happened there was this nymph called Echo. Echo has her own history of how she became Echo. There was a time when Zeus, a god, was having an affair, and his wife got to know about it, and she knew, Echo knew about it, and Echo kept that secret away from her. So she cast Echo. Echo became an Echo. She only got to repeat the last words she had when someone spoke. So it so happened that one time she was out in the woods, and Narcissus is in the woods. She sees him and she's stricken by his beauty. She follows him, and Narcissus turns around like he could hear sound, but he couldn't see anyone. So he asked, "Is there anyone?" And she was like, "Is there anyone?" She kept on repeating. She was an echo. So eventually she couldn't stand it anymore. She comes out to him and tells him. And Narcissus is not having any of it. And this was a guy who was pursued by both male and female. She took the rejection painfully but gracefully at the same time. However, there were other nymphs who didn't like the fact that they were rejected, and supposedly they cast him to always love his reflection. Now it so happened that he went near a pond one time, and as he looked into the pond, he saw his reflection in the water. He fell in love with that reflection. Now it so happened that each time he tried to reach it, there was a ripple effect. He fell in love with this reflection, but he could never touch it. It's talked of how he starved, actually. He starved to death there, and then he got to become a petal. Then others say he went and touched into the water, and in the process he drowned, and his body was got and put somewhere. White and orangish colored flowers that got out of where he was buried, just next to the waters there. So many mythologies out there. I encourage you to look them up. It also spoke of how, because Echo wasn't loved by him and the rejection was painful, first she stayed in the rocks or something like that. She died there, and ever since then there's an Echo. Now I want to look at it from the biblical standpoint, because that's where my baseline is. But we shall go back to the book of Genesis. Narcissism is pathological indulgence of self. Everything is about me, myself, and I. It's first identified by a British physician, Havelock Ellis, in 1898. This personality disorder is characterized by grandiose sense of self-importance about themselves. Everything revolves around them. They hate to be criticized. I mean, it is a curse for you to criticize them. You invoke a curse when you criticize them upon yourself from them. You're looking at someone who has got a very fragile ego, yet presents themselves as this all-secured person. Sigmund Freud, known as the father of psychology, spoke of it as a normal developmental stage. However, if it persists beyond puberty, it becomes a disorder, is what he said. Now there are other psychoanalysts such as Otto Kenberg and Heinz Kohut, who agree that narcissism is rooted in early childhood experiences regarding the dysfunctionalities in parents. We are now getting into epigenetics, how the environment affects one's genes. I'm sorry for the background noise. Some construction is taking place around. I personally believe narcissism is it's both rooted in nature and nurturing. Nature comes from the fall of man. Genesis chapter 3. We actually find the origin of narcissism in man. This is due to the fallen nature of man after them going against the word of God. That's where the nature comes in. For you to be narcissist, as Sigmund Freud's angle of understanding, is to be born. That's all. Because of the first sin by man, Adam, you automatically qualify to be narcissistic, selfish in other words. When we look at Genesis chapter 3, I encourage you to read 1 through 24. God created man in the garden. Then after that, got him and put him in the Garden of Eden. Remember, there are two gardens here. It's not just one garden. That's something many people miss. The Garden of Eden is a heavenly garden, which was also planted on earth. As it is in heaven, so is it on earth. We are now seeing Adam is presented with everything, and he can eat from any tree, but not from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A rib is gotten from Adam. I encourage you to look up my video on marriage as it was in the beginning. There's a wealth of information in there. Later on, we find they're in the garden and next to the tree. She's having a conversation with the serpent to eat a fruit from there. Adam was there the entire time. I'll always say this. Adam already exhibited traits of a vulnerable narcissist. His silence and then his blame shifting later on. Before anyone falls into the trap of the serpent, a conversation has been going on. So this convo we read in the Bible, it didn't happen once. Something had already been brewing. So the serpent gets to convince the woman to eat of the fruit. The woman turns and gives it to Adam, the man. Adam eats the fruit. And when the serpent approaches the woman, he even gaslights her by saying, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The thing is that Adam was given instructions, and I'm certain he gave them to the woman. When the woman ate the fruit, nothing happened. After the fall and then the cursings are in place, we find that Adam names the woman Eve. Eve in Hebrew is Hava. We are looking at the letters Het, Vav, and Hey, and these add up to the number 19. Adam is a generic term for both woman and man, beside it being Adam's name, the man's name. Remember that Adam is Aleph, Dalet, and Mem. These add up to 45. Adam is generic for both the woman and the man, 45. Hava here is 19. So if we subtract 19 from 45, we are left with 26. 26 now is the number for the man. So you're finding 26 plus 19, we get 45. The number 26 is the same number for the tetragrammaton. This tetragrammaton, when we add it up, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, we come to the number 26. So we see Adam as a man has the same number as the tetragrammaton. And the tetragrammaton, when we vocalize it as in Yahweh, we come to the number 45. When the woman ate the fruit, you're seeing 19 ate the fruit. When she gave it to Adam and he ate it, we now see the 45 in place. And that 45 is the oneness God talks about, because 45 reflects Yahweh. When Adam ate, he broke the union, the covenant between him and God, between him and Elohim. Disobedience brought about sin. Sin brought about fear, and that fear birthed shame and guilt. 2 Timothy 1:7 tells us, I have not given you the spirit of fear, but that of love and of power and of a sound mind. Given the fact also that perfect love casts out all fear. Fear came as the result of the absence of God, and fear made them fear the presence of God. God is omnipresent, he's everywhere. However, God being everywhere doesn't mean he is in you. This meant they are no longer under the sustenance of God. As we see later on, that when God was walking in the garden looking for them, they hid. God goes on to ask, where are you? Man goes on to tell God, I had you in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. And he said, who told you you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree from which I commanded you not to eat? And to bring to your attention that just like faith comes by hearing and hearing the word of God, fear comes by hearing and hearing the word of the devil, the serpent, the liar. Them hearing the voice of the serpent, in other words, they obeyed the voice of the serpent. It terrified them. A terrified person fears the presence of God. God's presence brings about peace. The serpent's presence brings about disorder. God said, those who worship me in truth and in spirit. Adam said, we were naked and we hid. To be naked means you're in flesh and in lies. Flesh and lies reduces you from the spiritual realm to the flesh. There is a death you experience in that regard. And you cannot talk of you're getting your sustenance from God anymore, as fresh water and salt water cannot come from the same fountain. Luke chapter 6 verse 43 to 45 says, no good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad fruit bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. The good man brings good things out of the good stored in his heart, and the evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For out of the overflow of his heart his mouth speaks. What happened in the garden at that point was no longer just about the mouth as we know it. It was the issue of the heart. Their hearts got changed, and at that point the nature of man shifted from righteousness to unrighteousness. That's where I believe the aspect of Sigmund Freud, that we are inclined to that primary narcissism. There's that angle of being evil in nature. However, the catch for me comes in Proverbs 22:6, where God says, train up your child in his way, they shall not depart. That explains for me the nature. The only way to qualify for it is to be born. However, what matters now is the nurturing. And this is why we have the rule of the thumb. In the nature I can talk of, maybe it's 10% or 20% or 5%. So you're finding that nature and nurture, the nurturing now plays a huge role, and this is where we are getting into biopsychosocial spiritual, because both aspects are confirmed by the word of God. Like I said, training up a child in his way. Your environment determines who you are in future. Oh, God wipes away the past is gone, the new has come. Yes, the very God who does that has also put a principle. Train up shall not depart. It's a principle of sowing and reaping. And he's not mocked. Whatever you sow, you shall reap. That is something about God. I'll continue with this in the next video. And I'm sorry for the background noise. There's a lot of construction taking place. Thank you so much for watching, and blessings.